time to get started. It's time to talk about Light Season 2. Welcome. So I've been really excited to talk about more Light stuff for a lot of reasons. One, I've been talking with Jeremy Gage, a lot about live RPGs and what that means exactly. And like he's blowing my mind with the way that he thinks about it. He's got really cool. He's thinking about it like in terms of these interesting business models and everything like that. Really fascinating practices. Jeremy sees things like not like a week from now, but like a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, and I'm barely thinking about what is happening tomorrow. So it is very nice to bounce ideas off of Jeremy about that sort of stuff. So, talked about Jeremy about live RPGs. Naturally, that's connected to Light. We have talked about how Light is going to eventually become this live thing, and what exactly that means. I'm still figuring that out. But part of previous discussions have been like Light Live as being this thing that gets incorporated into season 2, which I think might be the direction that I'm gonna move in. Oh, Eli, thank you for that. Thank you for following. Nice to see you. But that's to be discussed. That's to be determined. The other, hello, Matt. Hello. The other reason I'm in a big Light mood right now is because Light season 1 is ending in like a day and a half. Because I technically said four modules over 4 months, so I have to get into April to release the fourth module. Even though I just finished it yesterday, I'm very excited to release it. Which means it's time to think about the next thing and when that's going to happen. I think naturally that means it would start in May if I wanted to keep things going. So, like, I'm going to do in general a how was the season pass experience stream on Thursday when the final module for season 1 goes out, and I can kind of reflect on what the process was like, and I want to hear what folks thought about the process, what they thought about the season pass, and how I might change it and stuff like that, incorporating that live element maybe, or changing the rate of releases. That's for Thursday. That's Thursday, Spencer's problem. Tonight, Spencer is dealing with season 2, thinking ahead. And so, thinking ahead, still going to follow at least the core principle of the season pass is that it's going to still follow that concept of X number of modules over X amount of time. And based off of what I had thought about before, it was going to be 4 modules, 4 months. We've done this before. And here are my notes from when I was first mapping out like a year of Light content. And you've probably seen some of this stuff if you saw a previous like Light Live dev stream, but like here's the basic concept. Like season 2 is called Eclipse, I think. That's what I'm going to go with, and it's going to be pretty much about enemies. It's going to be about the baddies and like the threat of the game, which this was written months ago when I first wrote this. It's changed a little bit in my mind, especially with the last module for season 1 that's coming out soon. But if the first season was about Spark and it was supposed to be about sort of like growing your characters, making them more powerful, which meant more subclasses, armor, casts, a strike system so that you could have like a loot and advancement system that was robust so that the players could actually get stronger. And why are they getting stronger? Because something's coming. And that needs to be what season 2 is then, right? To use that strength. Because otherwise, well, I mean, you did it for fun, but maybe you want to flex those muscles. So that's the premise, right? And I talked a little bit about what this might look like, and this is what I want to talk about today, is Module 1. So I'm going to copy over my notes that I had done before, and I want to talk about this. So Module 1 is going to be introducing a new gameplay element to Light, which is called Right now, it's just called invasions. Um, Maybe I'll have a better name for it, but for now, we'll call it invasions. Um, I guess I forgot to check. I assume you all can hear me. I've been messing with my levels with this because I have a new headset. I'm hoping that I've fixed it for the most part, but I probably should have checked that at the beginning. It's been going on for like 10 minutes. um, okay, here's the basic premise. I love tight gameplay loops. I should just um, I love games that have like a very clear loop that they are trying to follow. Little low, but you can hear with my volume turned up. Okay, that's good to know. I'll have to figure out how to boost it. I mean, I could do that. Last time I had some like weird fuzz sound going on my end. Hopefully that's gone at least. Quiet, I think I can fix. Fuzz was harder to fix. Um, okay, so I love a clear, tight game loop. And when I say that, I'm talking about things like I always go back to, and I've said it multiple times, Blades in the Dark. Right? Blades in the Dark has a very clear gameplay loop. You, as a crew, decide what your job is going to be, what heist you want to do or crime you want to do. You go do the crime. That's half the game, right? Then you come back to your base of operations, and the other half is the downtime, and you just do that again and again and again, and they feed into each other, and I love that. I ran a sandbox campaign of like years ago, and it was fun. But it was one of those things where we're just like, well, 3 hours have passed. I guess we're just done for today, and we accomplished. Who knows what we accomplished that session? There's a time and a place for that. That's fun. For me, I have found that over time, I like the tight game play loop, which is why strikes are the primary thing that you're supposed to do as a beacon. But now I want to give more structure to it with this thing called invasions. These notes are helpful to me, but I think I'm going to just kind of start new here so that I can come to it clean, and I'll bounce back at this. But here's the basic premise. I want to have a star map isn't technically correct. It's a system map because this isn't a galactic scale game. It's within the scale of the our solar system, right? So it's a system map rather than a star map, and it's got like key planets, moons, etc., locations of importance, aka the places humanity once held. Because the premise of this, borrowing largely from Destiny, obviously, is that there was a golden age of humanity, and we had kind of spread ourselves across the system, and the beacons were responsible for protecting it, and then everything fell apart. And we still have some of this stuff, but we're holding on to it now, and now it's being threatened. Um, these are being threatened by coordinated efforts from our enemies. That's the big thing. Is I don't want it to feel like random necessarily for the things that people are dealing with that the beacons have to fight against. I want it to feel coordinated in some way. So we need a map, and it's got all of these places, and the map tracks things for us. What is it tracking? It is tracking I'm going to call like the stability of a planet. So I have that sort of written up here as like levels of threats, but basically like each planet is ranging from totally in control, like there's no enemy threats, or enemy threats are so minimal to completely invaded slash lost. And we could think about it as maybe like it could be like a clock or meter of some kind. Um, I'm gonna keep using blades because it's very helpful to me. In blades with factions, you have a range that you are friendly or foe with that faction from like -3 to +3. So you could do something like that here, where +3 we're super helpful or super in control, -3 it's lost. There could be like kind of like a neutral where we're both warring for that location. And this stability is linked with a few things. It's linked with the factional support you get there. So like each planet will have factions on it or associated with it. There's the 3 factions that are in like the core rules of Light, but I want to start adding more of them. So there will be factions associated with each of these. So like the support you can get from factions or who you can work with. It'll also impact like the danger of strikes, and that could be linked to modifiers, right? I could have like a table of increasingly dangerous modifiers on that you could use to be like, this is a -2 planet. It's been heavily fought after by the Corvus Empire, and so now it's going to be a hard as hell fight. And so you can come up with modifiers then that would impact that. You just there could be different tables that you roll on. So like this is the -2 table, this is the -1 table. You roll, add 1 modifier to every strike beforehand based off of this. But it could also be benefits of the strike, which could be linked to modifiers. So you could have modifiers of rather than increasingly dangerous, like boons, right? Increasingly boons modifier. That's poorly written, but you get the premise, right? That if this planet is super in our control, then maybe we can get some access to some modifiers that are going to help us. If you have looked at Fuel, which was released a couple of weeks ago, there was a whole thing in Fuel that had modifiers for strikes, and there was good modifiers and bad modifiers. And so, at least I'm pretty sure I put that in Fuel. I might be mixing that up with Frame, which also had some of the had some of this. But I want to have a table that also could be things that make things better for you, or linked to loot, right? Better loot if you have the place in control, and that's cool, right? You want to hold places because they can give you certain loot, and then like loot could be associated with planets as well, right? Like maybe one planet just specializes in making badass hand cannons. So if one of your beacons is all about hand cannons, then they're going to be like, we're protecting Saturn forever. We will always make sure Saturn is protected. They might abandon Neptune because Neptune makes scout rifles and nobody uses scout rifles. You could do something like that. So that would be one of the sort of the premises of the stability here. Is it's linked with the danger of things, and then what you have access to and what you don't have access to. The other things that this map is going to track for us is the factions and the loot and everything like that. So I need to make new factions. That's something that it just generally needs to be done. And I'm going to think on this, on whether or not I want to have like loot associated with certain planets. It sounded fun as I was saying it out loud, and then after I said it, I realized maybe I'm not in love with that idea. So we'll contemplate that. We'll brew on that. So we have the system map. It needs this thing. It's basically, and I gotta find somebody who's gonna make this for me. Just like a note to self. Find someone to make this, because I want it to look good. And I'm not a graphic designer, right? I'm not an artist. That's not my purview. But if I can get somebody who's good at that sort of stuff, then that would be a cool thing for them to do. So we've got this map tracking all of this stuff. It now also needs a gameplay loop associated with it. And here's where I'm thinking about Band of Blades. So Band of Blades is another Forge in the Dark game, obviously inspired by Blades in the Dark, and the concept in Band of Blades is that you're this military running away from a great threat, and you go on missions, and the missions are generated. So this is something that I had sort of written up here, which is this idea of a bounty board of some kind, right? Like at the start of a session, the the GM could roll up some invasions that are going to happen across the system, and then be like, okay, you need to decide which one you're going to do tonight, and there are consequences to not doing things. So there's choice. I want choice to be involved here, rather than it just being up to the GM. This puts agency in the player's hands, which I think is important. I'm not a huge fan of games where the GM sort of makes all the decisions behind a screen or ahead of time, and brings this fully orchestrated event to the table. There's a time and a place for that, and I certainly see how some folks dig that, but for me, that's just generally not how I run my games, so I don't design my games like that. So I want to put agency in the player's hands, which means I want them to choose what mission they are going to be involved in, which means there are benefits to choosing one thing, like, more increase in the stability. And then there are losses for not choosing something. And in that case, it's, loss of stability. And then also related to that, these choices could, maybe should be linked to the factions as well. So the factions could be the ones pitching these missions, right? Like somebody has to tell the beacons to go do this stuff. They're not just flying around the solar system until they figure out where to go. They're being told to go to certain places, and so you link this stuff with the factions. Boom! It connects back to the Lighthouse module, which is like I think the second module I released for Light, might have been the third, which had this whole premise of you've got factions that are trying to that you work for, and if you fill in that faction's clock, you get a boon of some kind, which is sometimes mechanical, sometimes narrative, but always something cool that you have as players now. So the gameplay loop needs to be missions are drawn up, you choose what you want to do. The question then becomes, I have 3 written here, which I don't know. I don't know about 3. The whole point of 3 in Band of Blades is that you chose one to fail, chose one that you would just purely roll the engagement roll to see how it goes, and then one that you would actually go do. So 3 is arbitrary right now. It could just be 2, because I'm not trying to fully replicate the effect of Blades, and I'm not doing as much bookkeeping and stuff like that in Light as is going on in Blades. So, I, 3 already just feels like too much to me, but we'll see. We'll see how that kind of evolves. And then, so what this means is I need to revisit Lighthouse to tighten that up based on how this is designed. And that's a running theme across all of the season, is I need to revisit Light version 1.0. Because I've played it now with folks, and other folks have played it and given me thoughts and feedback and stuff like that, and so there are things that I want to change, that I want to update in Light, and So I need to kind of go back, and I think with season 2 will be the released, updated version 2.0, which will just be cleaner. It'll tighten up some rules that are left unclear. All of that was written with the premise of trying to fit everything on one page, and so, you know, I might allow myself to break free of that restraint. We'll see. So here's the concept of season 1 so far, is that we introduce a new gameplay element called invasions, related to this concept of coordinated attacks from uh, the enemies. And that's the other thing to do here, is to think about the the coordinated side of things. Like, I want to think about how to make this feel not like organic or natural, but like there's a there's a point, a purpose behind it, right? That it's not you're just rolling on the enemy faction table and deciding. I want there to be some sort of like connection to it, connection to certain planets, so that, let's say Mars is getting invaded by the Ruin, and then like the next time you play, you roll up and Mars is being invaded by the Windswept, and so, either you need to have like consistency in the enemies, which maybe means you have something like about like repelling a foe from a planet, like eventually just being like, okay, we've dealt with them, they're not coming back, or there needs to be something in there about there needs to be like GM advice on how to link missions or strikes together, so that there is some consistency across those things. I think that's important to do something like that. Okay, cool. Let's get some space here. So this is the first module, and so I think like generally I have a sense of what the module is going to look like, how it's going to, like, what I want to accomplish with it. There's obviously tons of holes here and things that need to get filled in, but I think this gives me a sense of what I'm trying to accomplish. I want to look and see what I had written down for other modules for this season, and then decide what I want to do with this time. So the second module was going to be a new enemy faction, which I had originally written down as something like the Taken. I'm doing something different. You'll see in Arrival, which is the next module to come out for Light, that it's not exactly the Taken. It's a different thing that I'm going with, but that's the second module, and then I've jumped to module 4 because I couldn't remember what I was going to do for 3, and module 4 is going to be like this last season is supposed to be the introduction to the thing that's gonna, the big bad stuff. Okay, so let's focus on invasions then. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we can codify some of this stuff, turn these like vague ideas into something a little bit more stable, I guess. I'm going to write myself a note here to talk to MV about this, because they're asleep right now, but I think they would do a really good job. Okay, so key planets, moons, and everything like that. We need like a sense of scope here, how many to keep track of, because if you do too many, it's annoying, right? Because you'll never be able to like keep up with all of the stuff that's going around. But if you do too few, then you won't feel the burn, really, right? It won't be hard, because you can just bounce back and forth between like 3 places. So I'm going to just say arbitrarily 6 locations. I'm going to say 6 for now, just because it's good to just pick a number and start with that and then see how it feels. So 6 locations. What do we got? We got Earth, we got our moon, we got Mars, Those are Mars and Earth are already established in terms of the light content that's out. It's assumed that the moon will have something because the moon is right there. We gotta do something with the moon, right? So then we just need three other locations, and you know, what could they be? They could be other planets. They could be. I like something like, in Destiny, it wasn't like Saturn itself because it's a gas planet, but like you enter the Dreadnought in Destiny, which was in the rings of Saturn. I like something like that. I like the idea of. I mean, if the concept is that it's humanity's like attempts at spreading across the stars, then obviously we would spread to the places that are closest to us first. So Earth, Moon, Mars, which also means probably Venus, right? We're bouncing around like everything in up to the asteroid belt. I think maybe like that's an interesting idea. Is like the asteroid belt is a soft border for us. Like maybe in this concept of light, like we didn't go past the asteroid belt because of reasons, um, and so we're not aware then. Um, Makes us blind to everything beyond it. We're not aware of the stuff that's coming, which is good. That sets up the premise of of the invasion module. If we don't know we're being invaded, um, cool. So then like we just plop in Mercury. Why not? And then we need one more. Could be in the belt, right? We could make it the belt, and then boom, we've got our six. Everything up to the belt essentially is territory. Could look at moons of like Venus and Mars and stuff like that. Don't know any of them off the top of my head. Don't know if they have them. Not very good at space stuff. Again, this is why I need MV. MV knows this stuff. Um, but that's the basic premise here. So here we go. We got 6 places that we can use as our starting point. That's good. And with the concept as the belt as being like the last place. Okay. Let's talk about the stability element then. The stability element needs to be, I don't know. I think I prefer a meter as opposed to a clock. Um, I like this idea of I don't know. Maybe I guess it truly doesn't matter. It kind of does because I think a -3 to +3 makes sense more so than a clock, right? So if a clock is just randomly at one segment, what does that exactly mean? It's just not as clear to me what one segment of a 6 segmented clock filled in means compared to being positive or negative. Just overall, that like we as humans have associated those things with good and bad, even though that's not always the case. But we can use that heuristic to our advantage in our design, so that positive, we know we're doing pretty good on the planet. Negative, we're in some trouble. And then 0 is a nice neutral point for us. Like having 0 as a neutral point, I think feels better. I think this is important for me to write for myself. 0 feels more like a neutral point than an empty clock. Because like an empty clock is 0, right? And then one segment is problematic, and really then like with a clock you can't go into the positives so much with a clock unless you do multiple clocks, which I don't want to do. Right? You could have a clock that's like good stuff going on the planet, bad stuff going on the planet, and then you could have like 2 competing clocks. But I don't think that's what I want to do. I like this idea of having a range like this that tracks the stability. I think -3 to +3 might be too much. Let's write out what the range is. So we've got, let's do -2, -1, 0, +1, and +2. And let's just get some numbers on this. Or some labels on this. So this is neutral, right? This is neutral. That feels good to us. 2 is, let's, like, so I think somewhere in there is like reinforced. Reinforced means it's, maybe like reinforced is this. And maybe I do need to add one segment into -3 and +3. We'll kind of see how it feels as I write out this strange version of a Likert scale. But let's say like +1 is in control. We're holding it. In fact, I even like holding/held better than in control. So we hold the planet, we've reinforced the planet, maybe we have something beyond that. Neutral implies what? Neutral implies enemy forces present, but not problematic yet. Something like that. Like they're there. We know they're there. We got to deal with them, but they haven't started like wiping things out on the planet or been. They haven't become something that we have to deal with yet. Then we've got -1 and -2. Let's see here. -2. I mean that's invaded, right? Or maybe I mean -2 is lost. -1 is invaded. And then again, maybe we do need like a -3 to be lost, and there could be a thing between invaded and lost, and there could be a thing between held, reinforced, and then something better than reinforced. But this is I think this is good for now to just have this as a starting point. It's good to have the starting point for me. Linked to a few things. So what can we start linking this stuff to? Factional support, right? Modifiers, positive and negative, which means we need some modifier tables, which requires me to go look up fuel real quick, which I don't actually have like quickly and easily downloadable or on my computer right here, so I'm gonna have to go download it from my page real quick. Fuel. Download this because I want you to be able to see it. Okay. So here we go. Here's the sorts of things that I had pulled up before, or that I had made for modifiers for fuel. Let me zoom in on this. Make that a little easier. Okay. So these were like good modifiers that could be added to a strike. These were bad modifiers, right? That could be added to a strike, and you could, as a GM, decide which ones to roll on. So these could be a good inspiration point for this, where I think we need. The question is, how granular do we go with this? Do we do just generally a negative versus positive tables? So just 2 tables, and they could be bigger tables, right? They could have lots of things besides just the 6 options that I have here. Or do we do value-specific tables? So -2 table has gnarlier modifiers than the -1. That's the premise, right? That way you can make this scary. You can make this word, like, you can really lead into it. Or, you know, you could also instead just do like roll on it equal to the value. So if it's -2, roll twice. Could solve that problem real quick. Rather than making multiple tables, we can just say make one table and you roll on it for each time. Roll on it for each score on the scale that you're at, which means 0, you're not rolling it. At a neutral point, you're not rolling positive modifiers or negative modifiers. Um, I'll write myself the note here to consider a zero table, but I don't know what that would look like. Is it equal positive and negative? That doesn't, I don't know. That doesn't sit right. That doesn't seem right, at least after just saying it out loud. But that's a premise. So cool. Let's think about some modifiers then. So let's do the positive table. And just think about some of the positive stuff that is going on here. So positive table in Eclipse is this stuff. So we've got like starting with more light, the resource that you use to spend for everything, plus X bonus for attributes. So I have that as each one of them is its own thing on here, but you could get so this is like a +1 or plus X dx or d6. Add more dice to those rolls. That's something that we can do. Weapons deal more harm, and then resurrecting doesn't cost light. So I'll write those. Weapons deal more harm. Resing doesn't cost light. But what are some other things that would be interesting positive modifiers? What are some other things that would be fun to add? That would be cool. That would make you feel cooler as a beacon. That would make your life easier. If you have ideas, feel free to throw them in chat. Like I'm down to listen to what folks have to think or what folks think about this sort of stuff. That's I don't have all the answers right now off the top of my head. This is just brainstorming. I was thinking about something about like linking it to loot, like getting more at the end, right? Like if you succeed on this strike, you get like an extra engram or something like that. That's always something that we could do. Just make it, just name the modifier like bountiful, right? The enemy forces have a ton of resources on this strike. Go take them from them. So there we go. There's like the rationale for that concept right there. Other things that could be interesting. I don't know. Like there's like downplaying the effect of dark. So dark is the stuff that you get when you die and you res. You get some dark. So maybe downplaying the effect of dark is you don't take harm, for example. Maybe that doesn't hurt you. It's still, you could ultimately get your final death, but maybe that part doesn't affect you. Or enhance wells, which are one of those things that I brought up and made in fuel, so that you had these wells that were places where the beacons could get their health and light restored. Maybe you could make them even better, right? Maybe you could make the wells on this strike, they always fill you back up to complete full health, restore all your light or something like that. You could have some really like good wells going on. What else could be done? You could do something with you could certainly do something with casts, right? Casts can be used more often. Right now, casts are these things, they're kind of like the equivalent of grenades. They're set up so that you can only use it once per fight, and then it resets, and then if you get into another fight, you can use it again. But maybe it's one of those situations where there's just like grenades all day, right? You can just keep throwing casts, or no limits on them or something like that. That's interesting. That could be. And then there's like non-mechanical stuff that could be cool. I don't know, like, is low gravity interesting? Or is low gravity just strange? Um, is that just part of a modifier that isn't good or bad, but just is happening? Um, I don't know. Maybe there's some of this non-mechanical stuff, and maybe there is. We'll see. Let's do a negative table while we're at it. Let's just get some ideas for the negative table put on the page here. So, negative table was this sort of stuff. So, all right, more, stronger enemies. That's in terms of how much health they have, uh, harm they deal, right? Just boost up the enemies, make them stronger. Certainly, we could like knock out those two right there. Um, Weaker or fewer wells, so the resource management of light kind of gets brought to the forefront if you're starting to mess with the wells. And then what else did I have here? Bring one weapon. That's kind of fine. I don't know. It's not. It becomes more important the longer you play the game. Only being able to bring one weapon. In the beginning, it's you only have one weapon, so I guess that's only helpful if you've like earned a couple of weapons that you actually care about and you're deciding your loadout ahead of time. I do like this idea about like enemies doing more stuff. I think that's cool. Like the enemies have moves written for them that they do, and if they're doing more stuff, I think that's awesome, right? That make things harder for these immortal guardians. Um, and then resurrections, yeah, like make death scary, right? So that means like, uh, how could we do that? Reses cost 2 light, or no res zones, so that you can't come back. You die there, it's a final death sort of thing. Make it scary, right? Um, and maybe another thing, as I'm talking this out, a thing that I could do here is we could also or change the die type you roll. No, it's all d6, so I don't like that. But that leads me to the idea of just plus x to the roll. So the table can be ordered from what we would consider like the least severe bad thing to the most severe bad thing. And that means like if the planet is neutral or has nothing wrong with it, then like let's say we come up with 6 things or 8 things, right? And it would require you to have a +2 or a -2 to add 2 to the roll. It started to get weird with the math and everything, but like kind of the weird mental gymnastics you have to do. But if I could more eloquently put the words together on the page, then it would be something like you couldn't get the scariest negative modifier if the planet's not in enough danger, right? So like no res zones or like not being able to resurrect is terrifying. But that shouldn't be the case unless the enemy has truly like shown up en masse and they control the planet and you're really struggling against it. So that's just something to think about. So we got stronger enemies. We can make the enemies just give them stats. We can make them hardier and deal more harm and stuff like that. We can mess with the moves, which I think is really cool. Mess with wells, weapons. What other things could we do that are negative? We could always do something like you start with dark. That's interesting. Or like we could do like a narrative thing. So you start mid firefight. Like you something went wrong and you're way behind enemy lines or something, and you have to deal with that to start with. That would be interesting, especially if looking at fuel with the different types of strikes. If you're doing something that's like you know you're trying to investigate a location and you just end up like at the location but way too deep into it, that's scary. Like that's something that's not. You might think that's cool. Oh, we got to the place already, but you don't want to be that close to the place because now you're in trouble. Um, that could be something to play with. Okay, so we got some negative stuff. Is there anything else bad that could be worth playing with? Hmm. Because this is like what? This is 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, 7, 8, 9. So maybe like 8 or 10. I like even numbers for the tables. 8 or 10. So how many is this? One. This is potentially three more, but let's just count it as 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 8. So I got like 8-ish in each one. That's pretty good. I could clean it up, trim the ones that aren't my least favorite, add some things as I think a little bit more on it about which ones I would do. But this is good. We have the tables. We've got the sense of this meter. The more I think about it, the more I really want a -3 and a +3. I don't know what the labels are for them yet, but this is a restricted range. It's too restricted for what I want to accomplish. So I want to do a -3 to +3. I just need to move Lost to here, and I need something between Invaded and Lost, and I need something that is like truly ours, right? Like it's like this planet is so ours. You stand no chance, enemies who come and mess with us. Okay, so we got real rough, quick 6 locations that we feel like maybe sketching out on a map. I feel pretty good with the direction of the stability meter and using it as a meter and everything like that. Um, Need to put in a couple labels, but that's quick. That's easy. Haven't done any of. Well, actually, I have done this stuff. I've done it with the modifiers at least. So we've got these modifier tables here, which we still need to figure out how we're gonna do it. I think I'm definitely leaning towards this, especially if I'm gonna add -3 and +3. I don't want to make 6 tables for this module. That's no, no thanks on that. I like making one table and then coming up with a rule or something like that makes that emphasizes how far you are in the positives or the negatives in terms of interacting with that table. We got the tables, or at least the starts of them. Haven't done anything with loot or factions just yet. And we have a sense of the loop that's going to happen here. It's going to be something about assigning missions at the beginning and then deciding which missions you're going to do. And then interacting with all of this stuff that is up here. Okay. I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty good for tonight. I think that was helpful for me. I got a much better sense about what invasion or whatever invaded maybe is going to be the name of the first module, whatever we're going to call it. I feel like we've kind of got a sense of the stability rules and a little bit of this. So we got actually a pretty good amount of what I want to think about with Module 1 on the page, which is awesome. Which means next time that I think about it, I can just kind of pick this up where I am right now and keep it going. So this is the thing though, like of all the modules, this is the one that I think needs the most time and effort put into it because it is supposed to set up like the concept of the gameplay loop for the game moving forward. Kind of like what Fuel did. Like I put a lot of work into Fuel because I wanted it to be like this is how the game is played, like at a single session, and now I want to enhance that with this gameplay loop with this invasion thing. So the first module, I have to come out the gate big for season 2. First of all, to make it seem cool and worth it, but also because a lot of stuff that follows after this builds off of this loop. And so, you know me, I said it earlier, I love loops, so I think this is a good start to the loop. All right, I think that's it. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks, everyone who came to watch. I really appreciate that. Hopefully, this was interesting. Hopefully, you learned some cool stuff about light. I'm really excited about where this is going to go. I can't wait to make more light stuff. I've got a month, maybe like a month and a half, depending on when I launch in May for season 2. So we got plenty of time to get all this into a more like structured format and everything. But I think we're gonna wrap it up there. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of the night. I'll probably do like 1 or 2 more streams this week, depending on schedules and timing and all that sort of stuff. But for now, let's call it. Have a good one.